an eager website proprietor and aspiring journopreneur, I was like a stockyard calf who thought he owned the farm. In 2012, I went to work for an avant-garde online news service called Demotics, which sold the work of freelance photographers around the world to news outlets. When I joined as editor-in-chief, Demotics had already signed up 30,000 photographers, plus a small full-time staff. The open-plan office, furnished with beanbag chairs and an espresso machine, felt like a proper tech startup. It was tucked within the London branch of its largest investor, the Seattle-based Corbis Corporation, that belonged to Bill Gates. Just as I took the job, Corbis bought Demotics outright. The founders, who meant well, I think, exited permanently. Everyone was told this was great news. The acquisition represents an enormous step towards our goal, the official announcement said. It went on to promise that Corbis would maintain our values of supporting free speech and covering the underreported. I wondered how big my editorial budget would be with the Gates windfall, 5 figures or 6. The horrible truth emerged when a Corbis manager from New York flew over for a visit. I called him the drone. Although he bragged about not reading newspapers, our main clients, he had somehow wound up in charge of news, sports, and entertainment. The drone greeted us with a PowerPoint presentation, which I supposed was how they said hello back at the mothership in Seattle. Then, turn by turn in small groups, we joined the drone on the office's twin red love seats. Grinning nefariously, he explained the new reality. There are 2 things Corbis cares about, he said. The first is making money. The second is innovation and disruption. I think Bill is especially interested in that second piece, innovation and disruption. We stared at him, mute. I knew that my English colleagues would sit in awkward silence forever, but I also knew that the drone expected a response. Since he had already raised the subject of money, I explained that many of our photographers were going into debt, not to mention risking arrest, abduction, and death, to go into war zones for the purpose of sending pictures to our little startup. With the vast resources of Corbis behind us, perhaps we could begin to pay these photographers a base rate, say $100 per day? That's never going to happen, the drone said. Ditto health insurance. That was just the beginning. Corbis, it turned out, seemed to have a radically different view of what constituted news, complaining that our coverage focused too much on street protests and factory fires in far-flung countries. Too difficult, too obscure. Instead, management wanted our street photographers to chase reality TV stars around red carpet events. Apparently, there was no such thing as too much Kardashian. The drone did make clear that Corbis was happy to keep receiving newsy images of combat in Syria or Mali, or whatever sorry country was sinking into hell, so long as we didn't get too involved when our freelancers wound up in trouble. Soon enough, we lowly acqui-hires discovered that the drone had a secret plan to axe half the staff. Incidentally, he would be assuming the key duties of my job as editor-in-chief, while I would be responsible for community or some such nonsense. I resigned. Several years later, Gates sold Corbis to a Chinese distributor for its chief competitor, Getty Images. Demotics went dark without warning, leaving thousands of freelancers out of pocket on assignments, with many, again, in dangerous situations, and cutting off their access to images they'd uploaded to Corbis servers. Included in the sale was Corbis's vast archive of historical photos, such as the famous image of Tank Man from the Tiananmen Square protests. Gates sold this iconic portrait of courage and dissent to a company that would be obliged by the Chinese government to censor it. For a few days after I quit working for the man, I basked in the afterglow of my own righteousness. I think I'll go back to writing for a while, I told friends. I spent the next year getting real comfortable in my pajamas. I knew the time had come to pick myself up and find something new to fail at. But what? I considered my options. I could try my luck again with another short-fused tech startup. I could return once more to my dying profession, the print press. Or I could go back to mopping floors, as I had after college. Where had I gone wrong? What did Bill Gates have that I didn't have, apart from billions upon billions of dollars? This line of thinking eventually led me to the realization that the solution to all my problems was simple. I needed to become a billionaire, like my former employer. Billionaireship is easily the most desirable career of the 21st century, with numerous advantages over fast-growing occupations like serfdom. And the perks are unbeatable. Prior to the incorporation of U.S. Steel...